And now it's time for Power of Prophecy with your host, former professor at the University of Texas at Austin, career United States Air Force officer, and best-selling author, Texe MARRS.
Hello, friends. This is Texe MARRS. Welcome to another edition of Power of Prophecy. You know, some of the greatest words in the entire universe are found right in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis, when God said, "Let there be light." Wow. Who can compete with that? Of course, he created man and then woman and went on to do more in the light area. He can, the planets, the stars, the lights in the firmament, and of course the light for the day, the sun, and the one that rules the night, the moon, and all that. But isn't it just astonishing? Let there be light. And that's where we're going to start today. Yes, we're going to start today looking at the great experiment. Now, it wasn't an experiment with God, because he knew when he said, "Let there be light," there was going to be light. He didn't experiment. He just made it happen. But you know, we've had a lot of experiment with light on this planet. And in fact, our lifetime is splendid, because really it's been in our lifetime, maybe the lifetime right before ours, that man really began to appreciate the meaning of the word light. I mean, in a practical sense, because we've had two great inventors give us light. One was, of course, Thomas Edison of Menlo Park, New Jersey. He was called the Wizard of Menlo Park, New Jersey. Now, not because he was a witch or anything, just because he was called that because he was an incredible inventor. And then we had Nicola Tesla. And not many people know about Nicola Tesla, but he lived about the same time as did Thomas Edison. In fact, he worked for Thomas Edison for a short while. But listen, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're going to talk about Edison and Tesla. And we're going to get back to God, too, because you see, both of these men had a connection with God. And unfortunately, that connection was not completed. It was not made. It's sort of like you dialing somebody on the telephone thousands of miles away, and they pick up the phone, but they just can't hear you. There's only static. No matter how much you scream and holler at them, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?" They just can't hear you. That's sort of the way it was with Edison. There's no evidence that Edison died a Christian. And certainly there's no evidence that Nikola Tesla died a Christian. Now, these two men who gave us the light bulb, who gave us the light system that we have today, I mean, everything about light. Can you believe the light that we have today? Digital and LED and all that, and just incredible lights. And the two men whom God gave great talents as inventors and knowledgeable men, neither one of them died as Christians. But they were testified. Men went to see, I know for a fact, Thomas Edison, and I read a great biography recently about Nikola Tesla called The Prodigal Genius. The prodigal. Well, we'll talk about what it means to be a prodigal. Of course, you know what it means in the Bible, don't you? The prodigal son. Now, these men were very serious men, and their experiments were just incredible. You know, Thomas Edison was once asked, "Why are you so brilliant? You know, why are you so smart?" You know, I mean, the man who asked him the question, it was as if Thomas Edison was just so ingenious that these experiments, they just clicked right away, and he had an invention. And he did have over 1,000 patents. I mean, the man was a patent machine, let me tell you. And so was Tesla, for that matter. And you know, the difference between the two, they had all kind of inventions, but where Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and he invented a very rough and primitive type of electric generating system. If it had not been for Nikola Tesla, we wouldn't have the lights as we do now, because he made the great dynamos and generators and the system of distribution and storage of electricity that make it possible today to light entire cities. In fact, they say that Edison was very, very jealous because he'd been working on that project for a long time, and he had a city block. He electrified an entire city block, and boy, was he really happy with that. Then come to find out, Tesla said, well, you can do it to entire cities. With my system, the alternating current, and they battled back and forth on their inventions, of course. And now, people don't know Tesla because Edison was a great, great inventor who invented things like, the phonograph. Well, he really sort of invented it, but somebody else got the patent before he did. But his wife once brought him she'd bring a sandwich every day for lunch. That's what he would eat, just a sandwich. And he'd get so busy working on his inventions and experimenting that he wouldn't get around to eating. Sometimes he would work all night, all day, all night. And he'd say, now, where's that sandwich, that Mary brought me? So then, he had two wives. One, Mary, died at age 29, and then was Mina. So I think it was Mina that brought him the sandwich. And he went to get a sandwich one day, and it was all moldy. He had waited too long to eat it. He, just got so busy. Have you ever been like that? I've been like that, working on a project, and I'd work all night, and boy, that's when you have the most fun. Now, some people can't see that they've always had an 8-to-5 job, and they just dread work, and I thank God it's Friday and all that. I feel sorry for people like that. A very wise man told me one time that if you really want to have a full life, in addition, of course, to knowing Jesus Christ, find something you love and work at it for your whole life. Find something you love. Then work's not going to work, is it? That's the way I am sometimes. I worked the other night to about 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I got up and I woke up thinking about my book that I was writing, and I thought about some ideas that I had while I was sleeping. And I jumped up about 5 in the morning. I slept about 2 or 3 hours, started working on it again. A lot of people say, Texe, MARRS, how can you write so many books? Well, I don't know how I cannot write books. I just, I have about 100 ideas for books and outlines in my head. And if you'd see my house and office and here at the ministry, it just looks like oh my goodness gracious, a rummage shack. It looks terrible. And Wanda is constantly, getting at me to clean up my office, and there's books and papers and articles and all kinds, and everywhere you look. And then, of course, there's also Michelle. She's been with us a long time. She's our office administrator, business administrator, we call her. She's bugging me too, Oh, when are you going to clean your office, Texe? Well, I don't know. I'm trying, but the more that I clean it up, the more things come in. I keep getting information and books and articles and research papers from all over the world. And I've got more in my head than I can write. So I'm, I'm behind on that. And some people send me whole books, say, I wrote this book. Tell me what you think about it, Texe. And when I don't get back with them in a couple of months, they get angry at me. Say, you don't care. Well, I really do care, but I've got these other 100 books over here, staring at me in the face, and I hadn't got time for them either. So, please understand when you write to this ministry, if you write me a letter or an email, I will read it within a couple of days. I will. But if you send me a whole book or something, or, articles, it may take a while. But I'll eventually get to your book. I remember one guy, I wrote to him, he sent me his book. And I finally got to it and read it. And boy, hey, this is a pretty good book. So I wrote him back and said, well, this is a pretty nice book, I like it because of such and such. And his dear wife wrote back and said, I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. MARRS, but my husband, the author of that book, passed away. Well, what could I do? That happens too. But I know he had fun writing it. He had a great message, and maybe it did some good. In fact, I looked at the book and I passed parts of it on to a friend. So who knows? He'll live on with it, just what he wrote. Now, I want to talk about the great experiment. Thomas Edison was asked, aren't you a brilliant man? Is it easy for you to get an invention going? He said, it's very difficult. He said, for every experiment that succeeds, there are 1,000 that fail. Boy, think about that. They thought he just went in. He said, I'm going to invent the electric light bulb. Or I'm going to invent, I never even finished my story about the sandwich, the moldy sandwich. So he was upset because the sandwich was moldy and old. So he said, I've got to find a way to keep the sandwich fresh. So he invented wax paper. It was very easy. Just put, the paper and put wax around it. And then you wrap the sandwich, it'll last longer. So now we have, wax paper, and of course we have aluminum foil and all that stuff now. But think about that. For every experiment that succeeds, there are 1,000 that fail. And, it's so different with Jesus Christ. Because if you want to experiment, read the Bible. And I believe it will instruct you and teach you about what God is. God is light. And once that idea barges into your brain, I'll tell you, it will. If you're born to be a Christian, you may think you're not, but a lot of people have told me, I didn't intend to be a Christian. It just happened. One day this or that happened. A man named Philip Morrow, I was reading a book by him, a wonderful Christian sister sent me a book about Philip Morrow. He lived the last century, and Philip Morrow was a great attorney. Boy, he was a great attorney. In fact, he had several cases against Thomas Edison, patent cases. But both of them really respected each other. But Philip Morrow would take a walk every Sunday down the streets of New York, and he would pass by a church. Now, Philip Morrow was a very distinguished attorney. Came from a pretty rich family. He made a lot of money. They say he must have been like a millionaire today, surely. Very rich, very brilliant attorney. But he didn't believe in God because he wanted facts. I will believe in God if you show me facts, he said, F-A-C-T-S. And he thought, if I'm going to believe in God, somebody's going to have to put so many facts out. Because when I study a law case, I go over hundreds of books, law books and such, and I know the case inside and out. And I'm not just going to study that Bible, one book, and discover God. I'm way too advanced. I'm too sophisticated for that, he said. Well, one time his family had gone to Europe on vacation and to stay a while, and he was left behind to work on this case, and he was in New York City, and every Sunday he would stroll down the street there, and he'd hear the sounds of, Sunday morning coming down. Well, there was this church there in New York City, and he would hear the sounds of people in there, and more, they sounded strange. You see, he had been raised as an Episcopal, which he admits was really nothing. Episcopals don't believe anything. We just go to church just to go. So he really didn't believe in God. No one had proved it to him. But he heard these people, and they were beneath him. You see, they were, the sort of the poor people. They were the working people, the blue collar and the laborers of New York City. And Philip Morrow, well, he was a famous rich man. He didn't socialize with any of them. But he was intrigued by their music, by their singing. They seemed so enthusiastic. And so he would stop outside the church while the service was going on and just listen. And boy, did he hear some strange things. He heard people inside that were evidently raising their hands and praising God, praising Jesus. And then he saw people leaving the church, after the service, and they looked like really nice people, but, well, he was so nicely dressed. His suit was so much better than their suit. And he was, he didn't really want to associate with people like that. He wanted to associate with the upper elite, of New York City. But he kept, every Sunday he would go back again. He made sure he walked right there at that church at that time because he wanted to hear. And pretty soon he started getting inspired by the songs and such, and about the idea of Jesus Christ and what he had done for them. And there were people in there just at the top of their voices thanking God, thanking Jesus for saving them. And one song was, I saw the light and things like that, and many of the songs were about light. So one day he snuck in. He was bold enough, brave enough. He snuck in and sat on the back row. And several people came up to him and welcomed him to the church. They were nice people. He said, well, these are nice people. I think I want to come back again. And he did. Again and again. Finally, it just happened to him. He said, suddenly I understood. I heard these people talking, and I realized that Jesus was true. I knew Jesus existed, and I didn't need all those books. I knew it. The Bible says in John, we know that we are of God. That's the letter, Episcopal, the letter of John. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. Isn't that something? But those who know Jesus, they know they're of God. A man came up to me one time and said, I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, then you're not of God. Oh, how can you be sure that I'm not of God? Because you would know. Well, he went on to contact me privately, and he said, I've been a pretty bad sort of guy. I cheat people at business. I do this, and I'm just sort of a scoundrel, and I feel really bad about it. And my conscience is stricken, and I really want to. Yeah. And he left my office thankful that he had met God. Not in me, by the way. I mean, not on my person. But I told him about God, how he could know. And that's what happened to Philip. Philip Morrow knew that he was of God. And it's an interesting thing, too. He then would go to other people that needed help that were praying and help them in that church. And he had only been a Christian a few short weeks, and a man was praying and crying in the pew. And Philip Morrow went up to him and put his arm around him and said, sir, can I pray with you? And the man looked up at him and said, now this is surprising. Think about it. The man said to him, as Philip Morrow looked down at him, he said, you smoke, don't you? Whoa, you smoke, don't. He evidently had smelled the smoke on Philip Morrow's jacket. You see, Philip Morrow, like so many men of that generation, of that time, would smoke a big cigar. I don't know why, it was just popular back in those days. And then they would sometimes smoke a pipe. That was a sign you were a gentleman and a dignified person. If you didn't smoke a cigar, well, you were nothing, But Christians didn't. No, Christians stayed away from that. This man said to him, you smoke, don't you? And Philip Morrow quickly answered back. He answered back, and I think it's one of those times where God tells you what to say and you don't even know what you're saying. He said, no, I don't. I used to, but I don't anymore. And he never touched tobacco again his entire life. He had seen the light, and that light led him to accept that for some reason, He couldn't tell you exactly why he didn't want to smoke anymore, but he didn't because he knew that Christians think down of you. That man may not made even a tenth of what Philip Morrow did in income, but he looked at Philip Morrow and said, "You smoke, don't you?" Philip Morrow said, "Boy, I lost my Christian testimony at that time, but I quickly recouped it. No, I don't anymore. I used to." Now, Philip Morrow knew Thomas Edison, and he contacted Thomas Edison and said, "I would like to talk to you about Jesus." Thomas Edison, so many people have tried to talk to me about Jesus. I'm so busy. I don't really, I know you. I like you. You're a great lawyer. I don't know why you believe in this Jesus, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I hate to waste my time, but I'll, if you will write it in a letter, I will read your letter very carefully. If you'll write it down, but let me warn you now, I'm a man of facts. I'm a man of reason. I want facts. So Philip Morrow sat down and wrote him a letter. And let me read that letter to you. It's quite interesting. He said, "Dear Mr. Edison, it was a real pleasure to see you and hear your voice again. Moreover, the matters touched upon in our conversation of yesterday gave me much to think about. You want facts. So do I. A reasonable man's belief should rest upon nothing less substantial than well-attested facts. So here is a fact for you. God, whom you reverently call the Supreme Intelligence, loves you and wants your love in return. My visit to you in this letter are evidence of it, though, of course, not sufficient to prove to your satisfaction either that God is or that he cares for Thomas Edison. But wait, another fact. God is light. How do I know? I know only in the way that light can be known, by experience. For the nature of light is such that it admits of being known only in the way of experimental knowledge. I am saying that to the man who has had more to do, I'm saying this to the man who has had more to do with the development of artificial light than any other who ever lived in this dark world, and who probably knows more about light in a practical way than any other. How then could the existence and the nature of light be demonstrated to one who had been shut up all his life in a dark cell? It could be done only in some way, such as by opening a window, and then the light would enter and prove itself. This I say because you are seeking a solution of the mystery of life and the soul by the way of analogies from nature. Very good. Much truth can be got in that way, as Butler in his famous analogy has abundantly shown. I hope you will continue your investigation, and in your customary thoroughgoing fashion, for it is the most important you have ever undertaken. And in this connection, I call your attention to a clear and pertinent analogy, the point of which is that the proof you demand can be had only by experiment. For myself, I know that God is light, and that he sheds light in the heart that is open to him, because I put the matter to the test of experience 23 years ago, and have enjoyed the consciousness of spiritual light ever since. Moreover, my experience is that of millions of others. Let me remind you that light will not force its way into a place that is tightly closed, but that if only a tiny chink be opened, in it comes, proving itself. Likewise, Christ Jesus, who is the true light, does not force himself into the chambers of the soul against the human will. For the nature of the matter is such that like the smell of a violet, the color of a sunset, or the taste of honey, it can only be known by experiment. The good book that you asked me not to quote, I'm sorry, folks. You see, Edison had asked him, don't quote the Bible to me, give me facts. The good book that you asked me not to quote says, come and see. Taste and see. Is that not strictly scientific? You have truly been doing God's work and helping to enlighten the darkness of nature. But there is a spiritual darkness too. So follow that analogy and it will lead you straight to the truth and to the solution of the whole mystery of human existence. With sincere affection and respect, signed, Philip Morrow. I think there's a lot in that letter. Did you know there's light, but there's spiritual light. Spiritual light. Now, I don't have any proof. I've read several biographies, but none of them have, convinced me that Thomas Edison met Jesus Christ and accepted him. But he did get very interested as he got it close to the end of his life, about the mystery of life. That was what Mr. Morrow was referring to. In fact, they say that when he died, he was trying to invent, which was an impossible thing, of course. He was trying to invent some kind of a device or a machine to contact the dead. But the Bible says that the dead, they don't talk to the living. They're not seen by us. But that's what he tried. But he didn't succeed. That was one of the areas where he experimented but failed. If he had read the Bible, he would have known it was an impossibility. Now we get to Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a genius of a man. He came from Serbia, which is called Yugoslavia. And he came to the United States as an immigrant. He worked for Thomas Edison for a while. And then he got out and got a little bit of money together and began his own laboratory and began incredible inventions. And we have the alternating current. That's the way we all get light today. He made it possible. When the Great Depression hit in America back in the 30s, George Westinghouse, who had gotten a license for the alternating current motors and had become rich through it, suddenly was about bankrupt. He was on his last legs. The owner of Westinghouse, the great electric company. And he went to see Tesla and said, I need a favor from you. Can you sign over your entire patent to me for no charge? And when the economy comes back, if it does, then I can pay you back. But right now, I cannot afford to pay you royalties. But if I don't have your invention, I will go bankrupt. And it will hurt America and me, of course. Please sign over your patent to me. And Tesla did so. Didn't get a cent for it. He signed over his entire patent to Mr. Westinghouse. Well, World War II came about, the economy improved, and Mr. Westinghouse didn't keep his word. He didn't give Tesla 1 cent. So Tesla's great idea, for which he deserved billions of dollars, he never got a cent for. He died penniless. He died without Jesus Christ in what was considered a flop house hotel, the Wyndham House Hotel in New York City. And I'm going to tell you about his experience with light when we return in just a minute. Nikola Tesla, the prodigal genius and light. I'm Texe MARRS. You're listening to Power of Prophecy. Hello, friends. This is Texe MARRS again. I hope you have obtained a copy of, or more than one copy even, of my new book, The Holy Serpent of the Jews. You know, I'll tell you, this book is a fantastic book. And I'm talking today about inventions and ideas and great experiments. And this is just something that God gave to me. You know, I really didn't want to believe it. I didn't believe it. How could a major religion that's known all over the world keep a secret? What is that secret? That the Jews worship the serpent, Satan, Lucifer, the great dragon of the book of Revelation. They worship the serpent. They believe the serpent is their redeemer, their friend, their companion, their Messiah, their God. Who could believe that? Well, we know the ancient mystery religions did, but this is the year 2016. I mean, surely that cannot be, but it is. And so I felt it necessary to write an entire book in which I quote rabbi after rabbi after rabbi. You see, because I'm a Christian, and if I just wrote about the Judaic religion and told you that they worship the snake, the holy snake, you'd laugh at me, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Of course you would. And I would deserve laughter. But wait. I quote rabbi after rabbi after rabbi. The most famous of the rabbis, going all the way back to the Middle Ages. And they've kept this great secret. They pray to, they worship, they believe in the holy serpent. Now there's much more. There's much more than that in this book. And I pray that you will get it. I hope you'll get a copy for your friends. I hope you'll give your pastor a copy and say, did you know, Pastor, that the Jews in their synagogues today pray to and worship the serpent? He'll say, oh, no, they believe in God. Yes, they do. And their God is the devil. Who said so? Texe MARRS? No. No less an authority than Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, he told the Jews, your father is the devil. Wow. I think when Jesus says something, friends, it makes all the difference. But he's backed up the rabbis. They all agree with him. It's the only thing that I found, I think, that rabbis agree with Jesus on, that they worship the serpent. Because Jesus said they are serpents. They're vipers. He wasn't just using hyperbole. He wasn't being harsh. He wasn't making it up. He was sincere. Now, the Apostle Paul said that they are into witchcraft, and other disciples. John the Baptist, of course, mentioned that they were vipers, serpents. So it's true, isn't it? So get this book, and you'll see there's never, as far as I know, there's never been a book like this. But even if there hasn't been a book like this one before, The Holy Serpent of the Jews by Texe MARRS, even if there's never been a book like this before, Jesus said it. He's the proof you need. Find out why he said it. Now, this book is $20, add $5 shipping and handling, a total of $25. And just go to our website, powerofprophecy.com. It's right there at the top. You'll see a description of the book. You can order it from our website online, or you can call us toll free 1-800-234-9673 and ask the friendly receptionist for a copy of the book, Holy Serpent of the Jews. Of course, we have many other books and such. You might even want to ask for a catalog from us, and we'll be glad to send you a catalog. Holy Serpent of the Jews, $20 plus $5 shipping and handling. Write to us too, would you? Maybe if you feel led by God to give us a donation, a love gift, or an offering, a tithe, whatever word you want to call it, please send that also. Whether it's $5 or $10, we will put it to good use. I promise you that. We will put it to the kingdom of Jesus Christ. You can't go wrong there, friends. So, Again, our phone number is 1-800-234-9673. Our address, if you write to us, is Texe MARRS or Power of Prophecy, 1708 Patterson Road, Patterson Road, Austin, Texas, 78733. And now let's return to our program. We're talking about the great experiment, Nikola Tesla, Thomas Alva Edison, and the occult world. What do they say about light? And the amazing light of God. I like to end that way. Isn't that great? Start with the great experiment and end with the amazing light of God. But when you order this tape or this a CD today, just ask for the great experiment. Okay? Now, I'd tell you about Nikola Tesla. He never made money. He had so many inventions, and the guy, let me just give you one of them. Did you know that he invented a boat that ran by remote control? Think of it. Back in his time, he passed away in 1943. He was born in 1856. That was astonishing to see a boat that didn't even have a skipper. He used remote control, made it go everywhere. He was a genius, wasn't he? They say he had invented a secret weapon. A secret weapon that it was like a thunderbolt, a direct charge that he believed that the possessor of this weapon would own the world because they would have the ability to destroy entire cities. Wow. When he passed away, when he died, Nikola Tesla, did you know that the equivalent of the FBI at the time, it wasn't really the FBI, but it was the government agents, went into his hotel room. He lived in this hotel that wasn't really worth anything, and that's where he spent the last days of his life. But they went in, and all they found was the bed, a chair, a lamp, and a safe. That's S-A-F-E. And they were afraid that maybe this weapon system, he had this plan, the blueprint for a weapon, a miracle-type weapon that would use direct charge electricity to destroy entire cities. They broke in the safe, and they found different plans and everything, but they took the contents of the safe and left. And you know what? They have never told anybody what they found. They've never told anybody what they found. If you can find out from some source what he had in that safe, would you please let me know? I'd appreciate knowing. Now, it seems that although he was born in a place where Jesus Christ was worshiped, and he came to the United States, to New York City, where I guess people said they believed in Jesus Christ, he never accepted the Lord. And in fact, his was a sad case because, you see, he had fallen in love with a girl from Serbia back home, and he truly loved her, but it just happened that she fell in love with another man. And she told Nicola, I can't marry you. I'm going to marry this other man. And it broke his heart. It really did. And you know what? He never dated. He never went out with another woman. He spent all of his life pining. He died. He was almost 90 years old, but he was just pining away, dreaming of that young girl. The girl that he had met as a young man, fallen in love with. But she fell for another. And let me tell you the saddest part. Nikola Tesla every day would leave his hotel room and walk across the street. You see, there was a public park just across the street. And they had benches there and trees and tables. And sometimes children would play there and such. And Nikola Tesla would sit on that park and feed the pigeons. Birds. He loved those pigeons. And he would stay there for an hour or two feeding those pigeons. And he suddenly thought in his mind that one of them was that young girl. She had died by then, passed away. And he believed that she was reincarnated as this pigeon. This one particular pigeon would come to him every day, and he would feed him bits of bread. and he would talk to the pigeon, and he dreamed that that was his girl, the pigeon. That shows how destitute he was of light, how much he needed light. Think about that. He believed that the pigeon was a reincarnated girlfriend. Well, Nikola Tesla. Now, Jesus talked about light, and he said that Satan was a form of light. He told his disciples, he was amazed that one day he said, I beheld Satan like lightning fall from heaven. Now, let me repeat that. Jesus said, I beheld Satan like lightning fall from heaven. You see, Satan was cast out of heaven. He rebelled against God. He was cast down out of heaven, and he's here on this earth, walking about, seeking whom he may devour, the Apostle Paul said. And Jesus was in heaven at that time. Jesus was with God from the beginning, was God, is God, shall ever be God. And he said, I beheld, I saw him as he fell from heaven. Isn't that astonishing? So, Satan is a form of light, in a sense. And you know, scientists have just discovered something quite amazing about human life. Scientists discovered that the male sperm and the female, I guess you'd call it the egg or the ovum, whatever. I'm not a great scientific in terms of man, in terms of medicine. But when the female egg is fertilized by the sperm, a bright light appears. Isn't that something? They actually, they saw the moment of conception. You know, they did these experiments. And when the sperm attaches itself to the female egg, an amazing light occurs. I think God did that. It's like, you know, he cried, it's like God crying out saying, I've created life. Another life is formed. That makes me believe and understand that abortion is definitely wrong. Abortion is definitely wrong. Life begins there in the womb, my friends. And it begins with a bright light. Can you believe that? A bright light by God. Think about that. Well, Jesus talked about light. Read Matthew chapter 6. And he says something, and listen to this. He said, if therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Oh my. You mean there's a dark light? You mean there's a light that actually is darkness? Yes. Jesus said so. He said, if therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? You know, scientists claim they've discovered something called dark light. And I can understand that because the occult world believes in this dark light. It is that light that they seek to attain. If you want to become a Freemason, know this. All of your life in the Masonic degrees, you will be seeking more light. In some of your rituals, they will ask you why you have come, and you will have to answer to seek more light. You see, you never obtain all the light that you need or want, because Satan will give you an insatiable appetite, and you will discover that you're ever seeking more light. But if you come to know Jesus Christ, it can be the way Philip Morrow came to know him, or maybe Texe MARRS as a young boy of 16. I just laid in my bed and asked Jesus to come into my heart, and he did. And I went to sleep. It was like, I'll tell you, it was like a light bulb went off. I just felt fantastic that night. I knew I had Jesus in my heart. And you know, I went to school the next day, and I went and I saw my friends, and I said, I've got Jesus. And they looked at me like I was sort of crazy, like I was a beast with three heads. But They had to accept it because, they were my friends, but okay, I went to church the next weekend. I walked up to the altar and said, I've accepted Jesus. That light went off. That flash occurred. I knew that I was saved. Now I've done some things that I'm not happy about in my life. I've committed some sins, but Jesus has been good enough to forgive me, and he'll forgive you too. Just read 1 John. Oh, he forgives. He's good enough. And none of us are so perfect that we never sin, but we know that we're of God. And the person who says, I never sin, well, he's not of Christ. It's an impossibility not to sin, but you try your best, be thou perfect. You try your best to be perfect. But if you fail, Jesus is good and faithful enough to forgive you of your sins. That's what it says in John. Now, in all of the ancient religions, in fact, in Judaism, they worship a god called Ein Sof. Who is Ein Sof? Ein Sof merely means the eye, the great eye, the all-seeing eye. And they say that you cannot communicate with that God. He doesn't want to hear from you. You don't pray to the Judaic God. No Jew talks to God. Because God, you see, from God emanates light. He sheds off light. And those sparks of light he puts in men, and he puts in his various gods and goddesses. Oh yes, there are many gods and goddesses in Judaism. There's not the great I Am. There's not the God Jehovah of the Old Testament. Oh, that's old stuff. That's unbelievable stuff. To the rabbi, no. They believe in this God of light. But he's that kind of light that is darkness. And that light that emanates from him is a dark light. A dark light. Now, all of the ancient mystery religions worship the sun and the moon. Because the sun and the moon symbolize for them their God, the God of light. And the occultists today worship the father of light. Who is that? Well, that would be Lucifer. Paul in 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14 said this. He said, Satan is transformed into an angel of light. Think about that. It doesn't say Satan is an angel of light. He claims he is. He claims he's the father of light. He claims to be the inventor. But he didn't invent light at all. And God has assigned to him a darkness that Satan can only pass off as a form of light. Darkness. And that's why Jesus said, if that light that is in thee be darkness, then great is that darkness. Matthew 6, verse 23. And you need to understand that Satan, being an angel of light, is called Lucifer. Now, what is Lucifer? There's a New Age occult organization called Lucis Trust. What is Lucis? It's a combination of Lucifer and Isis, the god of the Egyptians, the queen. Lucifer. In his book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, 33rd degree Mason Manly P. Hall, one of the greatest scholars, if you want to call it that, of Freemasonry, said that the solar deity is the one worshipped by the Masons. And he said, when the Mason, let me just quote him from a book called Lost Keys of Freemasonry. He says, when the Mason learns the key to the warrior on the block, now that's a specific title that Masons earn, warrior on the block, he has learned the mystery of his craft. He then accepts that Lucifer is his God. Lucifer. What does Lucifer mean? It means the son of the morning, the son of light. That Satan calls himself the son of the morning, but we know that he is darkness. Now, in the occult religions, in Freemasonry, and of course in Judaism, it is taught that man can evolve into Superman. By his consciousness, he can evolve, and that Lucifer will reward him eventually, and he'll become a god of light. That's what that he seeks to attain. And so they worship the sun. They worship the light. They worship Lucifer. And the serpent stands for Lucifer. Albert Mikey, a former Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry, said, light always constituted a principal object of adoration as the primordial source of knowledge. That's where knowledge comes from, the light. And they worship and adore it, the light. But it's that light that is darkness. A New Ager named John White wrote a book, and I talked about it in my book, Dark Secrets of the New Age. He said, first you go toward the light, next you're in the light, then you are the light. You see, that's what they believe, that man can attain that. Now, Lucifer is the name of Satan, or a name for Satan. And Masonry, Freemasonry, is said to be a struggle toward the light, but you never really find the light. But the Masons are always working against the sons of darkness. Who are those? Well, that's Christians. That's Christians. Lucifer, they say, is a good angel. And the Judaic religion says the same thing. That Lucifer is a good angel, an angel of help. But what do we know of him? Well, Jesus said he's a serpent. He's the old dragon. He's the devil. In Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike, another former Sovereign Grand Commander of Freemasonry, in his book, Morals and Dogma, he said, Lucifer the light bearer, this is his words, page 321 of that book, Lucifer the light bearer, Lucifer the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light? Doubt it not. Ah, yes. Now you see whom the Masons worship, don't you? They worship Lucifer as the bearer of light. And they say that the Mason becomes, in a sense, a sun himself, a reflector of light. And what does that mean exactly? Well, Manly P. Hall explains it. He says, the Master Mason is a great reflector of light. Now, that sounds holy, doesn't it? It says, he stands before the glowing firelight, and through him, get this now, passes Hydra, the great snake. Lucifer. Wow. And from the mouth of Hydra, says Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Mason, there pours the light of God. That is Hydra's, the great snake. His symbol is the rising sun. Now we know who the Masons worship. And it seems to be the very same God that the Hindus worship, the great cobra goddess and all. And the same God under the name Leviathan that is worshipped by the Jews. My friends, you're going to find that all of these religions, they use all kind of different names for that same deity, the devil. It's only in Christianity that he is properly identified, because he must step into the light. He is darkness. That's why you cannot communicate with Ein Sof, the Judaic God. You can't talk to him. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He has these intermediaries. The Catholic Church, of course, has invented many intermediaries. You can't talk to Jesus directly. You got to talk to his mother, Mary, or you got to talk to one of the many, many saints. But in true Christianity, Jesus says, come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Don't go to intermediary. Go to Jesus. He's the one that will give you rest. Well, so the secret of Judaism, the secret of Freemasonry, the secret of all of these false religions is that they worship a light that is dark. They have not yet found the light that Philip Morrow received. The attorney, Philip Morrow. But let me finish this talk today. I want to tell you what happened to Philip Morrow after he came to know Jesus Christ. He went back to his family and they said, you're different. You never were a guy to listen to jokes. You didn't like jokes. You were very solemn and serious. And now you're jocular and you're happy. You have fun in life. And he explained to them that he knew Jesus Christ as his Lord. Well, his family didn't know Jesus themselves, but they said, well, Dad, his son said, Dad, if it makes you happy and you can be laughing again, that's just great. Wonderful. And then Philip Morrow was told about his sister. His sister, you see, was lying in bed. She was very ill. She was very depressed. The doctors had said her life is ending. She doesn't have to die, but she wants to die. She has nothing to live for. Well, Philip Morrow, he knew that feeling. That was the feeling he got just before he came to know Jesus Christ. I may as well die. I don't have anything to live for, he said. But now he did. Now he was happy. Now he was joyful. And he went to see his sister. She was lying in her deathbed. He went into the room. He held her by the hand. And he said, my sweet sister, you're not going to die. I know why you're sick. I know why you're in this condition. She looked up at him and her eyes looked just tired, exhausted. He said, what you need is Jesus Christ. And the testimony I have is that she said, you're right, Philip. And he said, let me lead you on a prayer if you want to know Jesus. And she prayed. And then she got up off her bed and went and made his meal. She went and made his meal. She was alive. That's what the light of Jesus does for you, my friends. It's the difference between death and life. I know you want to live. I know you want to be happy. I know you want to be joyful. And I don't care about this election and who's going to win and whether we're going to be kicked back and we're going to lose our freedom of religion and all these things they say are going to happen to us. But none of those things are really going to happen. Because they can't take Jesus out of your heart. You remember that. Remember my words. No. You see, if you have experimented any length at all and a little chink of that light came into your life, then you know Jesus Christ and you're alive. You live. This is Texe MARRS. It's been great being with you today. And my plea is that you'll listen to us each week here on this radio program, Power of Prophecy. Tune in and discover the power of prophecy.